How are you? It's a Dr. Amuso. Today we want to talk about Napoleon. We want to talk about Napoleon as foreign policy. But we want to focus on the methods that were used by Napoleon to dominate Europe. What did he do so that he was going to be a dominant force in Europe? So we are going to look on different methods that Napoleon had to implement so that he became a big guy in Europe. Napoleon he had to use so many methods to dominate Europe. He dominated several parts of Europe. He dominated several areas in Europe. These areas that he dominated included Westphalia. There was also Cisalpine Republic. He was so dominant in that area. He also took over Naples. Naples, we see that it was now dominated by Napo. Then Spain, you remember Spain, which was ruled by Ferdinand the Seventh. So by so doing now, Napo, he was now dominating in Naples. Remember the Peninsular War. Then he also dominated in the Grand Duchy of Warsaw. So these are the areas that Napoleon dominated. Let's take them again. We talked about Westphalia. We talked about Cisalpine Republic. We have talked about Naples. We've talked about Spain and also the Grand Duchy of Warsaw. So now let's move on and talk about how he administered these areas. Number one, let's start with our dynastic policy, the dynastic policy that he had to use to dominate Europe. So he had to use his friends, he had to use his brothers and also sisters to dominate so many parts of Europe. He used his relatives in order to ensure loyalty or respect. He wanted these states that he controlled to be loyal to him. He wanted these states that he controlled to have respect in his rule. So that is why he had to put his relatives. He wanted to spread the spirit of Bonapartism in so many parts of Europe, explaining why these relatives were given authority in different parts of Europe. For example, you talk about Joseph Bonaparte. Joseph Bona, he was put in place in Spain. You move on, you talk about Louis Bona in Holland. You talk about Jerome Bonaparte in Westphalia. We talk about Josephine Baonis. We see that Josie was put at Cisalpine Republic, and we also talk about his brother-in-law Marat, who was put in Naples. So these are some of the friends, the relatives, the sisters that were given power, that were given authority in so many parts of Europe. Number two, let's talk about the continental system. We are talking about the continent, the whole of Europe, the globe. Napoleon used the continental system in 1807. He introduced this continental system whereby he had to pass what was known as the Berlin Decree. When he passed the Berlin Decree, he had to say that all the countries that were under his domain, all the countries that he controlled, they were not supposed to trade with Britain. If I saw you trading with Britain, I was going to roll over you. You were going to be attacked by what? By Napoleon. So when he did that, Britain responded by passing the orders in a council, which was a counter of the Berlin Decree. So what are we saying? We are saying that the countries that Napoleon controlled, they were not supposed to trade with Britain under the so-called the Berlin Decree. So continental system is another method that Napoleon used to dominate Europe. Then you move on, number three, you talk about matrimonial alliances, the issue of marriage alliances. We see that Napoleon used his sisters in these what issues used his sisters in order for him to dominate Europe. We see that his sisters, they were married to the princess of the duchies. He also married Marie Louise of Austria. You remember in 1809, Austria renewed the wars against Napoleon. They fought at the Battle of Wagram. Napoleon was defeated. They fought once again. Napoleon went reorganized. They fought once again, and when they fought once again, Austria was defeated. When she was defeated, now we see Napoleon marrying Marie Louise. So the issue of marriage alliances again explains why Napoleon, he was able to dominate Europe for a long period of time. So we've talked about his sisters being married to the princes, the princes of the duchies, and also him marrying Marie Louise. Number 4, let's talk about the constitution. The constitution, what are we talking about? The countries that he controlled, the states that he controlled, they were given the constitution that was drafted in France. They used the French constitution. So by using the French constitution now, it meant that Napoleon dominated these states. He dominated these countries. For example, Spain in 1812, she was given the French constitution. You talk about the Piedmont. You also talk about the Grand Duchy of Warsaw. You also talk about Naples. These states, these areas, they were given the French constitution. Number 5, you talk about the issue of taxation or taxes. The states, the countries that he controlled, they were supposed to pay taxes to Napoleon. They were supposed to pay Napoleon. So by so doing, those countries, they remained loyal to Napoleon. Number 6, you talk about the issue of garrisons. He stationed garrisons, or he stationed his soldiers. These soldiers, or the garrison soldiers, they were stationed at different areas that he controlled. Why did he do that? He was trying to make sure that when those states tried to revolt, those garrisons, those soldiers, they were going to thwart, they were going to stop those uprisings. And it was also meant to protect his relatives. Remember, we have to say that he installed his relatives, his sisters, his brothers, his friends to become leaders of what, of different parts of what, of Europe. So he wanted to protect them. In the event those people revolted against these people, those garrison soldiers, they were going to stop the uprisings from taking a place. He wanted what, those people to continue following his orders. It is said that in Spain, Napoleon placed an army of 30,000 men under General Junot. So we are seeing so many soldiers are being placed in what, in Spain under General Junot. Number 4, you also talk about Napoleon made use of foreign navies and armies. He used the Spanish Navy to patrol the European ports during the continental system. Napoleon also used the Spanish army to fight the Portuguese, or to fight Portugal during the Peninsular War. He also intended to use the Danish Navy, which was destroyed eventually by the British at Copenhagen. So we are saying that Napoleon made use of foreign navies and armies to dominate Europe. But however, it is important to note that these methods of using foreign armies eventually backfired. We see that the soldiers deserted, and when they deserted now, it crippled him militarily. Again, the rise of the spirit of nationalism, again, it affected Napoleon, and it led to his downfall. So these are the different methods that were used by Napoleon to dominate Europe. Let's now talk about the practice questions which comes on this subtopic. Examine the methods that were used by Napoleon to administer his foreign dominion. Which methods did Napoleon use to administer his foreign dominion? Number 2, how effective were the methods used by Napoleon to administer his foreign dominion? So that is what we have on the methods that were used by Blazo Napo to dominate Europe. Thank you so much. It's Dr. Moso.